and they gave me a copy of Heroes of Might and Magic 2 to play at home. And so I brought it home. It was my first experience with it. I brought it home and played it over the week. And I was scared. The reason why I was scared is I thought, this is a fantastic game.
Right.
There's no way I can make a game that's better than Heroes of Might and Magic 2.
And then after Disney, I mean, I have to talk about this. This is a game that I played in my childhood a lot. And as you know, a lot of people from Eastern Europe, which is where I'm originally from, it's almost like a religious game played in the Balkans and that area. So how did you start working on, Heroes of Might and Magic 3? How did you enter 3DO Studios?
Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Wow. Well, I was at the time, before I joined it, I was working at a company called Cyber Dreams, that made a lot of games based upon famous names from science fiction, fantasy, and horror, like H.R. Giger and Harlan Ellison and Wes Craven and such. But that company, although we were creatively successful, not financially successful, especially toward the end. And so, as that company was slowly dying, a former programmer who worked at the company, who had moved on to work at 3DO's New World Computing studio, contacted me and said, "Hey, they're looking for a producer. Want to send me your resume so that I can submit you?" So, and that's been the case of 80% of the jobs I've gotten in the game industry. It's always been either being referred by or told about the job by somebody I used to work with. So I sent them in and met with John Van Caneghem, who was one of the founders of the company. And in fact, John and I had met before, like 3 or 4 years before. We were both on a game design panel at the Game Developers Conference. And we talked to each other afterwards. And yeah, we should work together sometime. So it turned out this time was the time, and they brought me on to work on to build a brand new team to create a new sequel in the Heroes of Might and Magic franchise.
When he talked to you, did he tell you about Heroes? Sorry to interrupt you, but this is kind of interesting. When you guys talked, did he talk about Heroes? Was that still in the works, or did you know anything about Heroes Might and Magic?
When we met, he certainly told me what the project was, and they gave me a copy of Heroes of Might and Magic 2 to play at home. And so I brought it home. It was my first experience with it. I brought it home and played it over the week. And I was scared. The reason why I was scared is I thought, this is a fantastic game.
Right.
There's no way I can make a game that's better than Heroes of Might and Magic 2. So I thought, all right, what can I at least add to a sequel? And the one thing that I was probably disappointed by was that the artwork looked to me a couple of years behind the time. So I wanted to modernize the look of the game. So I thought that's what I mainly focus on. That's what I'd bring to it. So that way, when I felt confident to accept the position, being the producer of the sequel. And then I build my own team for creating it. They had already hired a designer, Greg Fulton, who was absolutely fantastic. But I brought in some new programmers, and I went through the art team and picked out a art director and picked out who I wanted to be working on my project. So I put together what I thought was a really good team for doing the sequel to it. And as it turned out, probably Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is even more popular than Heroes of Might and Magic 2 was.
Yeah, 100%.
So I thought we were successful. And yeah, it was successful enough. It's still popular today, in particular in Eastern Europe. 20 years later, still playing it. In fact, I'm going to a conference in Ukraine in December to talk about the making of Heroes of Might and Magic 3. So,
sorry, I missed that.
So Could you say it again? Whoops, my Siri just went off. Sorry about that.
Siri's like, Ukraine? What?
Yeah. So I'll be in that part of the world talking about Heroes of Might and Magic 3.
That's unbelievable, especially the fact that you're talking about the art direction and wanting to really step that up, going from the second to the third game, because I think the art and the style of the game today is regarded as kind of timeless, and it's aged very gracefully, whereas some games, they have not aged so well. Is that something you even thought about when you made the game, how it's going to age, or do you like look back today and say, wow, this game still looks pretty good considering it's 30 years or 20 years old?
I never think about how a game is going to age, because the lifetime of most games is only a year or two.
If you're lucky, yeah.
So, yeah, if you're lucky. So I don't worry about how it's going to age. I want it to look contemporary. Is it good when it's released? Will it appeal to gamers at that time? So, because that's where the money's going to be made when it's first released. So that's what I'm interested in. I'm pleased when I find out that a game that I'd made years prior is still fondly remembered. So that's it's kind of an afterthought to it. It's making a game timeless is never my main thought. It's sort of something I appreciate long after the game's released.
Of course. So when you started working for 3DO, can you talk to me what that was like, creating your own team and probably longer hours, maybe more stressful experience with the success of Heroes 2? What was that like, working that atmosphere?
Well, it was a great atmosphere because it was a great team. So I enjoyed everyone I worked with. Management was pretty hands-off all throughout the experience. I worked directly under the general manager, Mark Caldwell. But I think in the first 6 months, I think we only had like one meeting.
Really?
That's how hands-off it was. Yeah.
That's very lucky.
And my designer, Greg, had weekly meetings with Jonathan Canahan. So yeah, they were pretty hands-off on the project. So it was a great experience. The hours did get long toward the end, but it was enjoyable work, so I didn't mind the long hours. My wife probably minded it. I'm sure she did much more than I did, but I didn't mind the long hours. So that was easily the most pleasurable development experience I ever had, and I think it shows in the final product.
For sure.